I've been thinking a lot this week about programming. In January, we were hired to come down to Oklahoma City and do our Should Have Been choral repertoire in a theater type space. Our Should Have Been choral repertoire is our pop music. And then the next night we came back to Kansas City and turned around and did a concert at Visitation Church here in Kansas City. Visitation is a beautifully cathedral-like acoustic with a reverb to die for and a very sacred space visually as well. And so in my original planning, I had the singers do one program in Oklahoma City and a completely different program at Visitation, and we could do that because all the music were selections we had done before, so that it was possible for us to come together the night before Oklahoma City and rehearse, and then come together the afternoon of Visitation and get it all together and do two separate concerts within the span of 2 days with one rehearsal. But then I lost a singer. I lost a tenor, and so as I was trying to figure out what to do with the season, I thought, you know what, I need to do a combined concert, because no matter who I find, it's too much to ask for somebody with one rehearsal to come in and learn two entirely different concerts. So I set about creating a combined concert that this fantastic young tenor could manage in the short amount of time we gave him to rehearse with us to get it done. So we did a combined concert that combined the best of our pops music and the best of our sacred cathedral music all into one program. None of the pieces, I had to cut Sicut Servus, the Palestrina, because that would not have worked in Oklahoma City. And then I had to cut Moon Dance from the Oklahoma City program, because you really can't sing about moon dance in front of the altar at a Catholic church. So there was a balance there that was interesting to behold. I was surprised at some of the things that worked well in Oklahoma City. Eric Whitaker's A Boy and a Girl, which is a very difficult piece with very tight, I wouldn't even call them harmonies, but tight clusters of chords. In a very dry acoustic, I thought it would die, but it was actually quite thrilling because it was such a dry acoustic that you could hear the tension more so than you can in a very lugubriously acoustic space. Whereas on the flip side, the King Singer arrangement of Blackbird, the Beatles' Blackbird, worked beautifully in Visitation. Even with the acoustic and with the reverb, it was a really, really beautiful way to hear that piece. And so there were discoveries from doing this combination concert that really intrigued me. And I never would have thought to do Blackbird at Visitation. And certainly, knowing the acoustic of the space in Oklahoma City, I would not have programmed A Boy and a Girl. But they worked there. And so programming is something that has so many facets. You have to program things, obviously, that your group can do, that your group can learn in the amount of time they have, and that your group can show off its best qualities. But you also have to program in a way that you keep your audience engaged and entertained, and that's kind of hard sometimes, particularly with a group like mine where we sing completely unaccompanied choral music and we only have 8 singers, so there's limitations built in all over the place because of the forces, the performing forces that we use. You can't beat them over the head with a big pile of Renaissance music by William Byrd. I mean, it's beautiful, and in a university setting, maybe you would do an entire performance that's just Renaissance motets. But, you know, in the real world, people get tired and they need a little variety. So you need to program with variety, but at the same time, you need to have that variety have some sort of connection that runs all the way through it. And so I try to program thematically. I program for the space I'm going to be singing in, and I program in a way that my audience can find connections, whether they are doctorate holders in music, or whether they are just, you know, people off the street who wander into the church because they heard pretty music outside. So those are the 3 tenets for me of programming, is that, you know, you have to program in a way that you don't lose your audience. You have to program in a way that you don't lose your performers, that your performers don't get bored or overwhelmed. And you have to program in a way that provides variety at the same time as it provides a unified theme going through it. So these 3 things are the way I program. And then Saturday I'm doing a program called Art Local. I commissioned four pieces from established composers. I worked with 2 student composers, one at William Jewell College and one at University of Central Missouri. So they're right there. I'm programming an entire concert, and 6 pieces of the total 10 are pieces I have no control over. 3 pieces are winners of competitions, so I did have some control over choosing those and choosing repertoire that I knew we could do, but otherwise I had 6 pieces out in left field. I had no idea what I was getting. And even when I was planning the concert, I didn't know what pieces would win the competitions either. I hadn't chosen, I hadn't even received the pieces. So I'm planning this concert last September with no idea of what we're singing, no idea of whether the texts would be sacred or secular, no idea of what kind of acoustic I required, whether people were going to write very brilliantly melismatic pieces or very lugubrious harmonic pieces. So I needed to find a space that had an acoustic that could work both ways, and a space that could work for both rampantly secular music and also deeply sacred music, because I had no idea what I was getting. Interestingly, I got all secular texts and mostly lugubrious harmonics, although there are 3 or 4 moments in the pieces that I'm very glad for the acoustic I chose. I chose an acoustic right in the middle, at a church in town that is a Frank Lloyd Wright designed church, so it has sacred elements to it, but it's a theater type of seating in the church, and so it feels both sacred and secular at the same time, which I thought would be a nice combination for whatever I was going to get. But as I was planning this concert, it felt very strange. I was programming in a vacuum. And then I made that the point of the concert. I'm programming in a vacuum. I have created 10 new pieces of music here, 9 new pieces of music here. What are they going to be like? Come in March and find out. And it's been a really interesting process to work with the composers, and then to work with how to put these pieces, these very disparate pieces, in some kind of order that's going to make sense to the audience. And in some kind of order that's going to provide a unified experience from the downbeat of the concert to the end of the concert. So you can hear parts of Art Local. Some of the music from it we sang on Kansas Public Radio last week, and there's an archived recording of that online at the address below. And then the concert's on Saturday, and we're doing an archival recording of the concert, and I'll share parts of that if I can possibly manage to do that. But in conclusion, when you're programming, when possible, think about your programming. Think about people who don't know what you know and how you can reach them and make them want to know what you know. That's the basis of programming. That's what it's all about.